this plot of land on the island. They were from England, and his idea was that he was going to be a gentleman farmer. You know, that's somebody who, I mean, they took care of the finances, but then hired people, did all the work on the farm. But unfortunately, the farm did not end up being that great to begin with. They found this plot of land that had a very old house on it, made of stone, and Jim went about renovating it. In the process, he put wood paneling on the interior portion of the house, and left a gap of about 4 inches between the stone walls of the house and the wood paneling to act as kind of like a natural insulation, because the Isle of Man is well known for not being the most hospitable environment on the planet.
Okay.
So after they were there a couple of years, Jim would later tell psychic investigators that he saw a couple of times a small animal of some kind that he really couldn't identify. You know, he couldn't tell maybe if it was a polecat or a weasel or whatever, but he shot at it because he had livestock and didn't want something, establishing itself. But then later, they got the idea that whatever this thing was had moved inside the house, because they started hearing noises in the walls, like something scrabbling around. So at first they laid out traps, so that didn't work. And then after a while they just kind of gave up. And then this thing started making animal noises, growling like a dog, or barking like a dog, meowing like a cat. And Jim, just kind of as a joke, started doing the same thing back. If this thing barked, he would bark back. If it meowed, he would meow back. And then it would respond in kind. And after a while, it kind of evolved into making sounds like a baby. You know, baby noises, ba ba ga ga, like that. And eventually it turned into speech. This thing, whatever it was a fast learner and started to talk. And it obviously had a very high intellect, because it learned to talk very quickly, and it was smart. I was trying to think of a good way to put that, but it turned out to be extremely smart. And at one point, it told the Irvings that it had understood human speech for a long time, but Jim was the first one to teach him how to speak. And eventually it identified itself, its name was Jeff, G-E-F, and it was a mongoose. And it said that it was over 100 years old, and that it had originally been born in India, and then brought to the island maybe about 75 years before by a farmer who was attempting to eradicate the overpopulation of rabbits. But it said while the rest of the other mongoose grew older and died, he didn't, and he remained. And then eventually it's claimed to have moved in with the Irvings, and that is really how it all started. This little creature, allegedly, living in the walls of this house with a very good vocabulary and an almost human-like intelligence, but also exhibiting what you would call traditional poltergeist type activity. It could move things around. It could squirt water out of various knotholes in the house at people that it didn't like. At least if you were lucky, it was water. Other people that weren't as lucky, it was piss.
And the family actually thought it was a poltergeist, right, Tim?
Say that again.
I said the family actually thought it was a poltergeist, correct? If I remember
Well,
right.
Naturally, at first,
Yeah.
they thought it was a ghost. They thought they were being haunted. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, here's something in the walls of your house that you can't see. All right, because it took a long time before it even revealed little tiny parts of itself. So they thought they had a ghost. Let me take that back. At first, they weren't sure, and in fact, Jim attempted again to trap it or to shoot it, and which really pissed it off even more, and it threatened to harm the family. Jeff said that if he wanted to, he could kill all of them, and they could do nothing about it. So eventually, they just kind of, declared a truce, and got to be friends. But yeah, at first they thought that they were dealing with a ghost, and in fact, it's funny because later Jeff would tell them that he was afraid of ghosts. So if he was a ghost, he was a self-loathing ghost.
Almost sounds like a demon.
Right?
Well, because I don't know if you watch enough of the Conjuring movies, they always talk about it's not really a ghost; it's actually a demon that's inhabiting the doll or inhabiting a mirror or whatever the thing is. And the fact that it would steal the identity of what's obviously an influence from Ricky Tikki Tavi. Otherwise, nobody from England would even know what a mongoose was without Ricky.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was 1894, which was what 40 years before this happened. So if it was anything, it could have been a demon. Especially the fact that it was threatened the family and said, "I have the ability to kill everybody in there." No mongoose on Earth, even if it could talk, has a chance against a human being. So this had to be one hell of a mongoose or a demon.
Well, we darn sure know it wasn't a pissing ghost.
Well, the Irvings actually, I think they brought in a paranormal investigator, Harry Price, I believe.
Yeah, after a while, they tried to keep it secret, but it's a small island, and word got around really fast. That there was a spook at the Irving's place. In fact, it was called the Dalby Spook. And then after a while, it made it into the newspapers and spread all across Europe. I mean, it was a big sensation. Naturally in England, but even newspapers in the United States covered it through wire services. Eventually it got the attention of paranormal investigators like Harry Price, who was probably the most well-known investigator at the time. He had researched a number of very famous haunting cases, looked into spirit mediums, things like that. At first, though, Price was not able to make the journey from London to the Irving's place across to the island. So he sent various friends over to try to establish what was going on. Most of them were not able to experience the joy of Jeff, but a couple who were somewhat persistent and open-minded to what was going on actually heard him and witnessed his antics. though nobody else, with the exception of the Irvings, ever physically saw him in full form. Some people saw his paws, his front paws, which didn't look natural. They looked more, I suppose, more like they didn't look like a mongoose paws. They looked more human almost, or maybe like I suppose maybe like a raccoon or something like that. So, maybe Jeff was actually a raccoon disguised as a mongoose.
Tim, you bring up a good point, Tim, because I wanted to ask you this, as I know you're the expert on it. Like, what sayest thou to these spelunker debunkers that say the daughter was faking the whole thing herself, and that she knew sign language, or she was a musician, all the stuff they were saying about how they were had stuff hooked up in the walls? And what did you feel when you heard when they were saying that type of stuff? Because it sounds like it's more involved than just like being able to fake it like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they wouldn't have had anything hooked up in the walls because there was no electricity there. No electricity, no telephones, nothing. I mean, the lighting was through, lanterns, candles, fireplace, things like that. They were out in the sticks with their farm. Now, the island did have electricity, but it hadn't made it out to, where the Irvings were yet.
Yes.
So, they couldn't have had, anything like that. Now, as for the daughter, her name was Vori. And by the time that all this really started to ramp up, she was about 13 years old, which really is, that is the age when a lot of poltergeist activity can happen. Like other haunting poltergeist cases that involve teenagers, the blame almost inevitably ends up on the kid. And that's the way it was with Vori. Naturally, people suspected that she was faking it somehow, or maybe it was a combination. It was thought between Vori and her mother.
She was a ventriloquist, right?
Well, that's what the accusation. That's what they said. Yeah. At that time, and you remember this was the early 1930s. It was still thought by people who weren't actual ventriloquists that you could actually throw your voice. That you
I don't
could
actually believe in ventriloquism. I haven't never really experienced, like, I see people do it, but to me it never seemed like you could really, it just seemed like moving a mouse, so I don't think.
Oh yeah, well it's just a matter of distraction, distraction. That's why you've got the ventriloquist dummy. Everybody's looking at it and not, paying attention to you moving your mouth. But people then thought that you could actually throw your voice so that it was coming out of a closet or a wastebasket or the walls of your house, and like I said, there was the accusation also that maybe her mother was involved, that they were unhappy living on the island and that they were trying to scare their dad or husband and dad into giving up the farm and moving back to England.
So they never made any money off of it?
Oh, no. Well, no. There really wouldn't have been. It would have been really hard to try to monetize, something like that back in the 30s. Harry Price would later write a book about Jeff, but there was only about 500 print circulation of that book, and it didn't sell very well. And the Irvings didn't get any cut from it. So no, this was not an attempt to make money.
Was there radio in England back then? Did they receive any type of? Were they? I know they were known on the island that they lived on, but did this story get out of the Isle of Man, and did it become like did newspapers in England? Was it well known at
Yes.
the time that it was happening?
Yes. It was big news. All across England and the continent, and like I said earlier, some wire services in the United States even carried it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was covered extensively, and a number of reporters and gawkers, went to the island in an attempt to see Jeff and have a conversation with him. Um, the Irving's neighbors pretty much all vouched for them, and a number of them actually heard Jeff themselves. They would say that he was so loud that he could be heard from outside the house. So I mean, if you're standing around visiting outside the house, and Jeff was in one of his moods, because he would at times have a temper and would and basically have temper tantrums and scream and curse and have very colorful language. People who heard him said that his voice was extremely shrill and high pitched, kind of like what you would expect the voice of a little animal to sound like, except that he could be extremely loud, probably much louder than a normal physical creature could be.
Right. Okay, so that brings us to the guy who is trying to bribe. What'd you say his name was? The one that was trying to get to go see him.
Well, Harry Price he wasn't trying to bribe. He just, it cost a bit, to take that trip from London to the Isle of Man. So it took him a while to get funding for the. Gosh, I can't remember what it was called. There was a big paranormal group located in London at that time. It's like the physical research group, LTD or something along those lines. But they were able to get up enough funds that Harry and another one of his associates were able to go and visit. But Jeff refused to make an appearance, and in fact he said that these people were doubters, and there would be no way that he would go and talk with doubters, and then would make and then just disappear. He wouldn't talk to anybody. He would go away and not come back again until people had left. So I mean, he was so naturally it's going to be assumed that this was some kind of hoax, because people showing up who were trained to look for this kind of stuff, and then Jeff won't make an appearance. So yeah, you're going to start thinking these people are trying to pull a fast one on us. And that was part of the frustration of trying to investigate this case, because you did have some of these investigators, actually managed to talk to Jeff, see some of the physical things that he